Dun, dun, dun.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Happy Sunday. How doing? I hope doing well. Welcome to another meeting of the Annotation Station Book Club. Today we have me, of course. If this is your first time, hello, welcome. I hope it's not your last time. And then that's Natalie.
Hi.
Yay! And we are here to review our nonfiction pick. This was from November. We're reviewing it now.
Yes.
We got to it, right? We are reviewing Child Free by Choice by Dr. Amy Blackstone.
Yes.
So we are, for anyone who is here and doesn't know about the book club, the Annotation Station is a book club where we read 2 books every month, a fiction and a nonfiction, with the goal of reading diversely and staying informed. We review the nonfiction on my channel and we review the fiction on Natalie's channel. And we're actually going to be reviewing the fiction pick right after this.
Yes.
You can join us there. Okay. So, yeah. Let's talk ratings, which I say
it's
every
never
time.
helpful with me.
I know, but I know that
nonfiction
here for that. So, do you
well,
want to feel?
What I can say is, I never rate my nonfiction or hardly ever, but I really, really enjoyed this one. I actually made it through the entire thing, so that was a good sign. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed this. If anything, I only thought the last chapter was meh, but everything else was fantastic. So
yes, Natalie made it through a whole nonfiction. We are so proud.
Because the December one, I did not finish. I made it almost 50%, but
that's okay.
Not quite.
Okay. That's why we tag team. Hi, Rouge.
Hi, Rouge.
Haven't read this book, but still want to join because I missed the streams. That's okay. I hope
Valid and real
today. And the title of this book is literally me, us two.
Yes. Yes.
Which is
that's why we were interested in reading about the topic. Because it is us.
Yes. We're gonna have a lot to say about it. Yes. So I gave this 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. I do more frequently rate my nonfiction. And this one I gave 5 stars because it is something that I felt very seen by and is a topic that I'm very passionate about. And I was like, yes, give me data that I can use as receipts. I love it when my nonfiction does that for me.
Yeah.
Yes. Hi, Shannon.
Hi, Shannon.
Yay. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Okay, cool. So generally what this book is about, it is talking about adults. More commonly, I think in this case, it's talking about millennials because it is more contemporary. But a recent, I don't think personally think it's like a phenomena, but I feel like the internet's kind of making it seem like a phenomena. Like the millennial culture is not to have children, but like there's always been people who didn't have kids. I think we're just kind of talking more about it now. And it's becoming a little bit more socially acceptable that there are people who just don't want to have kids by choice. So this is exploring that because the author themselves is in a relationship with their husband and they've chosen not to have kids.
Yes.
So talks a lot about that. Is there anywhere that you want to start?
I told you I don't have a brain anymore. You have the notes. You're in control.
True. I have your brain on this paper. Okay, so let's just go from there. So let's start with one of the concepts that I think we both really enjoyed was brought up, and the concept of selfishness.
Yes.
Why don't you take the lead on that?
I can take the lead. I'm fine with that. No, I loved that it was brought up in this book because it is like a very popular term used to describe people that have chosen not to have children. And actually, I ended up seeing a video recently talk about the topic, and it was like, selfish for who? Who are we being selfish toward? It's like, isn't it more selfish to have children for vain reasons? Like, why is it selfish to choose not to have them? Like, anyway, she doesn't actually frame it that way exactly in the book. She mostly talks about how the rationales of both sides could be interpreted as selfish,
Mhm.
because she mentions how people who choose to have children oftentimes are talking about, well, I want to continue on my legacy, or I want someone to take care of and someone to take care of me. I want someone else to love me and love whatever. Um, versus people who choose not to have kids, oftentimes it can be like, well, I want to prioritize my relationship with my spouse or my partner, or I want to have more opportunity and ease with travel, or I just don't want to have to make time for kids when I'm off work and all this stuff. And it's like neither side is bad. And to me, it brings to mind the idea that like selfishness is not inherently a bad thing. It's an excess of selfishness that is a problem. Because ultimately, like, the one who has to live with your decisions is yourself.
Mhm.
Most other people for these kinds of decisions are not affected by them at all.
Yeah.
It does not affect their lives at all. So it's like choosing to be selfish doesn't have to be a bad thing. And
Yeah.
especially in circumstances like this, that it's like me not having a child literally does not hurt anybody else.
Quite literally. Actually, I think according to the studies and information that she provides in the book, it actually does quite the opposite, because it talks about the fact that people who are child free does not mean that they are childless. And I really like the way that she explained that. We are both living examples of that as educators who have dedicated our lives to children because we both care about children. It's not that when people choose not to have kids that they don't like children or don't care about children or don't have children in their lives. She even mentions that plenty of people who are child free actively have jobs that are considered like social work or something that improves society and is related to children.
Yes, yes, that is actually one of the big things that she brings up, that like many people want to think that, oh, the child-free people hate children and
Mhm.
all child-free people hate children. And that's just factually not true when you look at the professions that many child-free people choose.
Correct.
Like Steph was mentioning, like you were mentioning, like we're both teachers and we've both chosen to be child-free. And it's like we're happy to deal with children in the workplace
Mhm.
and help, shape the future of our society. But that does not mean we want to go home and have little kid running around there too,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know?
Absolutely. I've had this conversation with my students. I don't even know how many times at this point. They always say, "But like, Miss, don't you want to have kids?" And I'll tell my students, I'm like, "No, I don't want to have kids." And sometimes they go, "You can do that?" And I said, "Yeah, there's no rule that says you have to have children. It's your body, it's your culture, it's your life. Do with your life what you will." Um, but when I explained to them my choice, sometimes they do say, like, well, what about your legacy? And I'm like, you guys are my legacy. My students who I'm imparting knowledge on and hopefully grow up to be decent human beings are the legacy that I'm leaving behind. I don't need to bring another person into the world when I feel like there are so many children that personally need parenting and need support. Does that mean that I think people who have children, are like morally superior? I don't think either side is morally superior. It's
Yeah.
not about morality
Yeah.
in that way. It's more of just like what is within my capacity for my life to be able to enjoy my life. And personally, I don't see it with children. Also, like being the fact that we're both teachers, we talk about it all the time. When we come home from working with children for 8 to 10 hours a day, we disassociate. And you can't
Literally.
do that when you
Yeah,
have little
that's
kids.
that's the big thing. And like I feel like that's one of the aspects that's not talked about that much, but like when you're neurodivergent, it can be a struggle to go from a highly stimulating, overstimulating, frankly, space, and then have to go home and there's not a break from that either, that is a lot. That's
Yes.
actually the main reason why I'm like, I cannot have kids because I cannot do my job, which I love, which I don't want to leave, and also have a kid waiting for me at home. I can't do it. That's why like I mostly say it jokingly, but it's also true. When my kids ask me, they're like, "Oh, are you going to have kids or whatever?" I'm like, "If that ever ends up happening, that's the day you stop seeing me in this classroom."
No, it's true.
That's the way, that's the day I'm gone because I cannot do both.
Mhm.
I
Keep
personally,
my
I
sanity.
just can't. So I'm like, that's the day I'm gonna be out these doors. I don't know what else I'm gonna do, but I'll be out these doors if it ever ends up happening, but I'm not planning on it at all.
Yeah. And I like, and that's just, I think if anything, that's not saying that like people who do that, because there's plenty of parents who also work in highly stimulating environments with children. It's not to say that it can't be done. It can. They do it. They make it work for them. But I actually, speaking for myself, I admire that they are able to do that, and I recognize how hard that is and how much sacrifice that they do in order to make sure that their children, aside from the ones that they care about for work, but the ones that they care about because those are their biological children or ones that they've chosen to raise, that is hard work, and I respect that enough to know that that is not something that I can do at the capacity that I would like to do.
Yes, exactly. 100% agreed. Like I definitely have coworkers that I'm like, I look at them and I'm like, I don't know how you do it. You're amazing. Actually, you're a star. You're
Yeah, you're a rock star. You're a gold star.
but can't be me. I'm like, it's a struggle to take care of me, just me alone.
Mhm.
Adding another life? No. I wanted
Well,
children, but I wasn't able to have them, and I'm okay with that. I don't think it's selfish not to have
mhm.
children. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not about selfishness. And I actually, there was something in the book where she talked about, I'm going to tie this into finances because it's something that I wanted to talk about as well. And I think this is a good segue for that. Is she talks about the fact that people who are child free have more discretionary income, and that income, if we want to talk about ideas of selfishness, it still doesn't apply to that because studies have found that people who are child free are more likely to donate to charities or donate to other children, like buy more gifts and things for either nephews or nieces or other children in their lives. Obviously not always the case, but tends to be. So it's not that it's just like, oh, all my money is my money. Like, yeah, I love my money, but I also do donate to charities, and I do I do those things because I have the discretionary income to say, okay, I don't have to put it all into a child, but I do care about, for example, I donate to public radio. I do care about free journalism, or I do care about supporting this artist, or, there's other ways that we give back to the community.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Oh, okay. You know what? That is a really good question. So I'd love to hear you guys talk about anti-nationalism. So,
Natalism, not
sorry,
nationalism.
natalism. Sorry, brain. Do you know what? Do you
She
want to?
does she does bring up natalism
Yeah.
in general in this book and the ways that different countries have approached trying to increase the birth rate in their nation in order to, because there's always this fear of like, well, if the people are not having children, we're going to be obliterated as a society, as a people, and everything's going to collapse. That's how they see it, in their mind. And she also talks about like both the effectiveness and ineffectiveness, basically, of how they go about these, in essence, propaganda of trying to get people to have kids. I mean, it does make me think actually about how people talk a lot about how some Japanese media, some anime is actually like pro-natalism
Mhm.
propagandas to try to get people to be like, kids are cute, I should have one. And
There's a
it's
whole wave of anime about that right now. Yeah.
yes, yes. And am I suckered in by it? Yes, but not to the point of like, okay, I'm gonna have my own kids. I'm like, well, first of all, I'm not Japanese, so it doesn't help them if I have a kid. But second of all, I'm like, one thing does not lead to another.
No,
Mm-mm.
not necessarily, no. Um, See, the whole idea of what's happening is that, well, if people are less likely to have kids, we're gonna get eventually gonna get to this point where we have so many elderly people and not enough of younger generations to be able to take care of them. And honestly, like that is a reflection of capitalist mindsets, which hypercapitalism is a failed system in and of itself because it depends on consistent growth, and consistent growth is not physically possible to sustain the earth as we know it. That's just it's going to hit a point eventually where it's like that is not realistic. Also, it doesn't take into the account that there are plenty of places that are experiencing hardship in which children are not able to get the care that they should be receiving. But the way that these numbers are being spun is by places that care more about an influx of a new workforce. And so that's why it's being pushed. That natalism is being pushed in those areas. Um, I think that does tie into the section where she spoke about Planned Parenthood.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that was really interesting. So, I mean, Planned Parenthood is another organization that I do support and have donated to in the past. But Planned Parenthood, as we know it now, is different from Planned Parenthood as it was founded, which I think at this point, is it 100 years old?
Don't ask me. I have no idea.
I think so, or getting close to it if it's not already, because she talked about, I think it was like the early 1900s. And I should have written down this woman's name. I don't remember her name. But Planned Parenthood, as we know it now, is more inclusive. For anyone who doesn't know, they're actually one of the leading places, from my understanding, of um, pro gender affirming healthcare. Um, and so, that being said, it was really interesting for me to learn that the woman who founded Planned Parenthood was actually, what would be the word for, is it a natalist? Is that the word? Like a person who promotes?
Well, well, she was participating in eugenics.
Mhm.
So I think part of it is they can be connected. They don't have to be,
Yes.
but they can be connected. So you're the one actually who remembers more clearly what was said in that
Yeah,
section.
yeah.
So you can give
So
me.
it was founded in the sense of like she was a white woman who founded this organization because she did want to provide gender affirming healthcare, which would be to women who needed what you call it? What's the word? Prenatal supports, I think it's is the word. Um so it was for like birthing centers and things like that in order to provide women the healthcare that they needed, especially when it comes to childcare. But she also believed in eugenics and so spent a lot of her time with money that she earned from the organization, I believe, like committing to eugenic organizations. I want to say it was like the 1930s. Don't quote me on that. Definitely do your own research because I don't remember. I listened to this on audio, so I don't have like annotations like that. But eventually she passed away, and the organization as a whole, to my knowledge, did make a complete 180 in how they use their funding and what their funding is used for. So that is no longer a part of
Yeah.
Planned Parenthood's mission statement, and what their organization focuses on. But it's just always interesting to hear about something that I associate with something as like an essential something essential to my community, and to know that it started somewhere that's deeply frightening
Yeah.
always throws me through a loop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So Let's move on to you know what? Sticking with finances and childbirth, I think she does talk a little bit, if I remember, about the cost of having children, especially in the United States. And
Probably.
huh?
Probably.
I think so. Yeah. She talks about the cost and just like the fact that in the United States, the cost of having a child can be so financially detrimental because of the fact that we don't have universal health care here. Um, and it actually, when you look at data of mothers' finances and parental finances across various countries, the United States is usually lacking in that areas because having a child financially sets back the family, but it also sets back the mother in terms of her career because a lot of that child care falls on the mother. There's a pay gap for women in the United States. What do we make, like, is it 80 cents to the dollar now or something like that? I don't know, comparison to men. But she just does talk about that in general and that there's nothing wrong with being aware of that and using that information to inform your decision for
Yeah.
your own body.
Yeah, I think part of it, of what she brings up, is actually connected to like basically the propaganda that other countries do. It's like there's a disconnect in the US between like what they want women to be doing, which is getting pregnant, having babies, so the US keeps being, populated, even though we have plenty of people. That's neither here nor there. But it does not align that with the services and benefits to give to parents. If anything, we keep getting worse and worse and worse for how we support parents when they've recently had children and all these things. It's like, the why would people want to have them when there is no basis of support? Like, that doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
um so, yeah.
Yeah, quite literally. On top of that, there's student loan debt and then there's housing debt. We're in a housing crisis, like all of these things. So it's it's really it's mind-boggling to see the propaganda that is trying to encourage a higher birth rate, but at the same time is providing a detriment financially to which would actually, if they were to invest in things that are going to alleviate people's financial burden, would encourage them to have children. But like,
Yeah.
what do I know? Just like, but yeah. So there's that. Also, I really want to talk about. She talks about the definition of family,
Yes.
what a family is, and I know you had a lot of things to say about that.
Yes.
So go ahead.
That was also one of my favorite sections because, and she brings it up in multiple ways, honestly. But the basis of it is actually rooted in this idea of like there's certain events that are labeled as family friendly, but then if you go and you don't have a child with you, you're looked like a little freak. It's like, what are you doing? This is a family friendly event. Where is your child? And it's like, well, family friendly, that should just mean that basically anyone is welcome, you know?
Mm,
And that obviously it also comes with the an idea that like certain things shouldn't be done, because she also talks about spaces that I'm gonna go into more what you were saying, but this is just
mm,
connected to me. So, but she also talks about spaces that are not inherently considered family friendly, but are bizarrely starting to be used as if they were. For example, bars. Like,
mhm,
there's been an increase in like kids' birthday parties being hosted at bars, which doesn't make any sense because the whole point of a bar is kind of like engaging in adult activities that children cannot engage with at all.
mhm,
And I do think part of what she brought up is actually connected to finances of why that's even happening in the first place. But regardless, going back to this idea of family and family friendly and all this stuff, she makes the argument that like family doesn't have to be this very, frankly, American notion of like the nuclear family, which
Mhm,
is mom, dad, kid. A
mhm,
family can just be two people who are together, married or not, whatever. They've decided to be together. That can be a family. Even a single person who has chosen to be single, not have a partner, not have kids, any of that, that can also be a family.
mhm.
Your pets are part of your family and do not have to include human children to be considered part
Correct.
of the family. It's like we have such a limited view of what a family is when ultimately that's also not helpful to us. Um, I don't know if you want to add
Yeah.
more stuff, but
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about, I think I don't remember if this was something that we were just talking about when we were on the phone or if this is something that came up in the book. But we were talking about bereavement in relationship to losing someone that you deeply care about and how currently workplace policies only cover bereavement of an immediate family member, like a parent, a spouse, a grandparent, and I think like a sibling. Maybe there's like one thing more, but the essentially like immediate
yeah,
family.
basically like your own child, because that could happen. Your
Yes,
own child, your spouse, your parents, yeah, maybe a sibling.
right.
Because I
Um,
feel like even with siblings, it's not that explicit, but it
yeah,
should be considered,
but
I assume.
but there are plenty of other relationships that should, I think, count for bereavement, such as, the loss of a friend. If you have anyone that you're close with, it is reasonable and expected for you to grieve in your own time, in your own way. And so creating a kind of hierarchy as to how you're allowed to take time off to grieve because someone else has deemed that a relationship should be higher up the rung of emotional, whatever, is just not realistic to how life works and how humans work in general. If I was to lose my best friend, I would be just as devastated as losing a part of a blood relative, because to me chosen family is that important, right? Like my best friend is my chosen family. My pets are to me like my children, and so losing a pet is a bereavement that should be given time and the space to process. So I personally feel like there should be an expansion to how bereavement in general can be used, and that should be reflective of like what a modern family is.
Yes. I feel like she potentially talked about it a little bit. We just ended up having a more
Yeah.
in-depth conversation about it, which is part of why, like, I remember when talking to you about that, part of what I brought up is like, for example, if you're lucky, you end up like at a workplace like mine that, for example, is very understanding. If you lose your pet, they understand that that is a type of grief. And maybe you don't formally put it in as bereavement, as your bereavement days, but they don't question if you take like sick days or something to be like, I need to deal with this and process this because this is too much. It's not seen as what's the word I'm looking for? Out of the norm, I guess.
Yes.
But it's literally up to the discretion of your superior.
Yes.
That's literally what it's up to, because if you look at the bylaws and all the stuff of most workplaces, it's only immediate family, and that is only human beings that are considered possible for you to take a bereavement leave for. And most of the time, that's also something else that I take issue with. The most you get is like 2 days, maybe three. Most places actually barely give you any bereavement time. It's just a small little thing. And again, I can say both having experienced grief myself, but also having seen other people experience grief as well, as like grief is very unpredictable, and trying to just limit it to this short span of time, like, okay, well, after those, I don't know, 2 to 3 days, you're good now, is kind of unhinged
Mhm,
um,
mhm.
of our society to do.
Yeah, and also I wanna bring up something that I think is unique to our experience as, people who work in childcare, is the fact that it happened to me at one of my previous jobs where a student unfortunately passed away. And that is something that you are not trained for. That is not something that is brought up in teacher training at all, is how to deal with the loss of a child that you care about. And at that job, we were not given any kind of bereavement. The teachers were not given the space to grieve. We were just expected to show up to work the next day. There was grief counseling brought in for the students, but I think that situation opened my eyes as to how the grief of the people who work in childcare facilities is not considered valid grief, because it's our relationships that we build in order to I think it's essential to being a good role model to a young person, is building some form of relationship, and for that relationship to come to that conclusion is something that needs to be recognized.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I remember while I was doing my master's in education that the only reason I actually went down a rabbit hole about teacher grief was because of some kind of research project that we had to do. And I think it might have even been because of where I did my student teaching that then I was interested in the topic. And so, out of my own volition, I decided, okay, this research topic, this is what I want to research about. This is what I want to learn about. And and that was already a few years ago, but at that point, the most consistent thing that you could find in research about teacher grief, which is also not extensive, is that it's very inconsistent. In many places, it's not acknowledged at all. There's no space held for it, and ultimately it's based on place to place is how it's handled. Some
Mhm.
places might try to involve the teachers in some way to acknowledge their grief, what's going on, and other places it's completely just nothing.
Mhm.
You're just supposed to keep it moving. um, and how many teachers, if you actually talk to them and they've experienced it, because it's often likely to at some point happen, um, all express like if they didn't have that available, they would have liked to have it available, because again, that was still a child that
Mhm.
they interacted with very frequently. And yeah, no, kind of sucks.
Yeah. Losing anyone in any capacity is hard. Losing a child is another another form of intense grief. So while this little side tangent isn't that the teacher grief is not something that was mentioned in the books, this all started with chosen family, which is very heavily mentioned in the book, and also fur babies and
Yes.
having other forms of children in your life, whether human or not human children, but something that you consider to have that same emotional attachment as a child, should be recognized as family, because it comes with very heavy emotional ties that should not, it's no one else's business to create a hierarchy of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, and then what else did we want to talk about? Um, Pets as members as family. Okay, I think those are all the notes that I got from your brain. And it makes up my brain too. Um, oh, she talked about her and her husband starting a blog that is about not having kids, and that well, it was a funny title. It was like,
We're not having a baby.
yeah. And that their silly selves didn't realize it was a bad idea to announce their blog on April Fool's Day.
Yes. Which, as someone who also in the social media verse, something also happened like that, but with a marriage announcement. Like, we're married. And they announced it on April Fool's. It's like, well, who's going to believe you?
Mhm.
No one. No one.
Nobody's believing it.
it's ridiculous. It's like they find it so silly that then like, wouldn't it be silly? And it's like, can we remember the roots of this holiday? The roots are we're telling lies.
Yes. Why would you do that?
um, but yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was really funny. Okay, I'm gonna go back to my notes in the chat because that's all I wrote down. But I know that there's more that I want to talk about. So feel free to jump in if there's something you wanted to say while I'm looking through my other notes.
No, I don't think so, frankly.
That's a lot of the big
Um,
stuff we wanted to cover. We talked about, let's see.
because the only other thing that's coming to mind right now that she does go into quite a bit is like the differences between how women are treated when they say that they're planning not to have kids versus how men are treated.
Mhm,
Um, and she actually does talk about, I think maybe even it's more her husband, because there is a section at the end of the book that is like a small essay that her husband wrote. Um, about this notion of like men, it's like they have it both ways. It's
mhm,
both seen as very masculine to choose not to have children and to have a vasectomy and all this stuff, but it's also very emasculating to choose not to do it. Because as a man, the expectation is that you want to continue your legacy, you want to engender children, um, as part of like an extension of yourself in a very different way of like what it's seen for women. Because women, it's more of like, will you naturally have these instincts to nurture and care and all these things? So, and you have your biological clock, which is one of the things she actually mentions that's like,
mhm,
the science does not support this notion at all. It does not support the notion at all that women have a biological clock, that they have a biological imperative to reproduce, um, and that they are better or not at caring for children. The only thing that we have proven is that women are more socialized into behaving in these ways, into developing these traits to be more nurturing and caring and know how to care for others versus men. Not that men are unable or maybe don't even desire to provide that same level of nurturing. They are just not socialized to do so.
mhm,
Um, Anyway, all of that to say that it's more likely for men to not get any heat or not as much heat for choosing not to have kids, while for women, it's a lot more likely that you'll get pushback if you say, no, I'm not having kids. No, I never plan to have kids. No, I'm not changing my mind, which is part of what's connected to um, the pushback that happens so often, which she does bring up about women who want to get a hysterectomy. So many doctors will just say, no, 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 you're going to change your mind. You're going to change your mind. There's a bunch of doctors as well who's like, well, what about your husband? What do you see your husband say? And all this other stuff. And it's like, what my husband says is irrelevant. This is my body. I don't want that shit in here. Get it
mhm.
out. And so, yeah, both medically and socially, it's a lot harder for women to confidently declare, I don't want to have kids and have that be accepted.
Yeah. There was a study that she talked about, and I don't remember what the statistics were exactly, but I remember my reaction to it when she was talking about men who have chosen to get a vasectomy versus women who have chosen to get a hysterectomy, and that how men historically, if they get any pushback, it would just be like, are you sure? Let's talk about the side effects of it. But women have to go through multiple doctors and in many cases have some kind of like fatal illness before a doctor will actually uh, give in to her wishes of this is what I want to do with my body. Yeah, and
Yes.
that's really unfortunate. Also, in that same vein, there she did mention about, for example, how politically women are their motherhood is tied to their identity, uh, in regards to their career path. So similar to what you were saying, but she was just using the example, which I think is pretty common, of if a man's running for office, he's not really asked about his wife and kids, as much as to how it's going to affect his job, versus if a woman is running for any kind of office, one of the first things she's asked is, how is being a caretaker to, a wife and a mother, going to affect your ability or qualification for this job? And that is a complete double standard.
Yes.
Also briefly mentioned, but this is more of like side tangent knowledge that I have, of the fact that like women's bodies, like even childbirth is politicized, even though everything is political, but like childbirth terminology is politicized. Like technically, medically speaking, there's no such thing as a first, second, and third trimester. That first, second, and third trimester was actually, I think it was invented, the idea of that was invented in like it might have been during Reagan. I'll have to double check that. But it was propaganda that was promoted by more conservative parties when it had to be the early 70s, because it was in retaliation to pro-abortion laws, to Roe v. Wade, I think, that they invented the idea of the first, second, and third trimester in order to create a designated like time for the propaganda against women's healthcare. So, little facts, the more you know.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, the last thing I wrote down, I think, is she talks about the idea of being child-free versus childless.
Yes, that should have been in our notes.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, she definitely tries to make the distinction between child-free versus childless, because previously most people were just categorized within the same label regardless of why they did not have children, and that was with the term childless. But eventually people who were choosing not to have children were starting to take issue with that term of being referred to as being lesser or missing something, not having something, when that was in fact a choice. They don't feel that absence because they have chosen not to take that route. And so most of the time she actually makes firm distinctions in the book when she's talking about the child free versus the childless, which is childless is they wanted to have children, they probably tried to have children, they were unable for whatever reason to have a child, and so therefore they both label themselves as childless, they see themselves through that lens, but that doesn't mean everyone has to. And so that's how we've also seen the rise of the use of the term child free to refer to people without kids.
Yeah, which made sense.
Yes.
So yeah, I think you put that well. I don't think I have anything to add to that. So. Yeah, so I think that's it for our notes. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
The only last little thing that was on my mind from my little spiel about the experience of men versus women is she does bring up male birth control and how they started doing studies about male birth control. And then for the most part, that has been kind of nipped in the bud because there were a lot of side effects happening and the men didn't like that. And so they kind of just put that on hold, even though literally the side effects are the same shit that women get for their birth control. So it's like, okay, great. Wonderful. Isn't that lovely? And just this notion as well of the onus always being more on women to consider and be mindful about birth control versus it being on men, when it's like, well, honey, you need both to make the child.
Yeah.
The child doesn't make itself.
Quite literally.
So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole other thing, that there's so much research now as to how much the father's health and other factors at the point of conception actually really matter as to the quality of like the pregnancy. So there is a lot of onus on men. It's just a matter of getting the rest of the world to actually like recognize that
Yes.
there's a lot of onus. But
Oh,
anyway,
and I feel like the two other last 2 cents I have to add, based both on how we talked about this book, but I think it's also very rooted in how it was discussed in the book. The book is very much divided into this like women versus men's experiences. It doesn't really talk about anything in between. Queer people might be referenced a little bit, but not ad nauseum. And like our conversation here isn't to exclude queer people and people who, however, in whatever ways, decide to make a family of their own or any of that. Is just following the track of how she talked about it. We're very aware not only women have children, carry children in their womb, all of that. Just wanted to add those little 2 cents there.
and I think that's a really good mic drop to wrap up the discussion. Yes. Okay, so before we close this out, I will do a little PSA about what we're reading and reviewing in January. So next month we are going to be, our nonfiction pick is Take Down Art and the Power in the Digital Age by Farah Nairi. She is an Iranian author, and she is an art critic for a few very prominent art journals. And so I believe this is going to focus on art in the digital, or art in the age of the internet and the ideas of censorship. So that's what we're talking about next month. Yeah. Okay. So if you'd like to join us and join our Discord, you can become a channel member at any level on my YouTube channel to get access to the Discord link. Our book reviews are always free. And again, the nonfiction is on my channel and the fiction is on Natalie's channel, which we are actually going to go do in about 12 minutes.
Yes.
So if you want to keep talking with us about a fantasy romance that we read, you can hop on over to Natalie.
Fantasy romance. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's a fantasy romance. Are we talking?
Wait, we've never known men. What are you talking
Oh,
about?
shoot. I was thinking about evocation.
We already talked about evocation. No, we're about to go into a rant, people, about a book that we read that we hated. And it's called I Who Have Never Known Men. If you want our tea about it, go to my channel. Yes. We're about to get started on that in a few minutes.
My brain was still thinking about November.
Because it was so good, because evocation was peak. But that's not the point.
But you're right. Actually, we're about to go rant on some other, with some feminist thoughts. So if you want to continue this conversation, you can jump on over there.
Yes.
But yeah, okay. I think we're going to sign off on this discussion for now. And then I also have reading sprints after that. So we'll be back in like another hour for some reading sprints. Neither here nor there. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks, Shannon. Appreciate it. Bye, everybody. See you later.